As the first light of dawn filtered through the depths of the Montana forests, Elijah Brooks awoke once again from the same nightmare. Drenched in sweat, gasping for breath, he bolted from his bed. The deep lines on the face of this 47-year-old black veteran came not only from age, but also from the burden he carried. His closely cropped hair was streaked with silver. His beard and mustache were unkempt. His deep-set eyes always seemed to be searching for something far away. His shoulders were broad but slightly hunched from years of weariness. The scars from war were hidden beneath his old leather jacket. "Again, my friend?" he muttered to himself. Right beside him, his loyal companion Shadow stood up. Shadow was a black and grey German shepherd and Elijah's only confidant. The dog's keen intelligence was evident in his eyes. Despite his military training, he had a special bond with Elijah. It was as if he knew what the man was thinking and feeling. Elijah stood up, tugging at his faded army pants. Looking out the window, the forest radiated unease, even in the early morning hours. He had come here to escape the city's noise, the judgmental stares of people. But the past had not been slow to find him here either. "Come on, Shadow, let's get some fresh air." When they went outside, autumn leaves rustled under their feet. Elijah's steps were heavy but determined. Shadow ran ahead, stopping occasionally to look back. It was as if he was saying, "Come on, life goes on." After walking for about an hour, Shadow suddenly stopped. His ears pricked up, his nose searching the air. Then he let out a quiet bark. "What is it, buddy?" Elijah stopped too, scanning the area. Shadow began to move forward with a determination Elijah had never seen before. He made his way through the dense bushes, as if he knew where he was going. Elijah was used to his dog's behavior. Shadow's instincts were never wrong. They walked for about another half hour. The trees grew denser, the sunlight barely filtering through. Then Shadow stopped and turned to Elijah. There was a different look in his eyes. Was it concern or excitement? "Where are you taking me like this?" Shadow pointed behind some dense bushes. When Elijah approached, he was stunned by the sight. Half buried among the bushes was an old helicopter. Its military green paint was faded, and rust spots had formed in various places. "Wow," Elijah muttered. "What's this doing here?" The helicopter looked as if it had been forgotten here for years. But what was strange was that no one in the area seemed to know it was there. Since Elijah had started exploring the area, this was the first time he had encountered something like this. Shadow circled the helicopter, sniffing constantly. Then he stopped in front of the door and barked. "Don't worry, Shadow. I'm thinking the same thing." Elijah approached the helicopter cautiously, thanks to his military training. The door was half open. It was dark inside, but there were no signs of danger. He took out a small flashlight from his pocket and turned it on to illuminate the interior. The pilot and co-pilot seats were empty. But there were metal boxes in the back. They had military markings and codes written on them. Elijah went inside, Shadow following him. "What is this?" he asked himself. The dates on the boxes caught his attention. 1968, 1969, 1971. In the years of the Vietnam War, Elijah's heart began to race. These dates were from the period when his father had fought. When he opened the first box, what he found inside surprised him. Files, documents, photographs, all stamped with military seals marked confidential. Elijah picked up the first document and began to read. Vietnam War, 173rd. Airborne Brigade, operational casualties. The document contained lists of soldiers reported missing in action. But what was strange was that most of these soldiers were black. And even stranger, these losses were recorded differently in official records. Elijah's hands began to tremble. He opened the next document. Non-combat losses, reclassified reports. Here was even more shocking information. Cases classified as non-combat deaths were actually combat losses. And the vast majority of these deaths were black soldiers. "This can't be," he muttered. Shadow snuggled up next to Elijah. It was as if he understood the shock the man was feeling. Elijah stroked his dog's head. "Shadow, I think we've stumbled upon something huge." He looked at the other boxes. Each one contained similar documents. But the most shocking was the file containing photographs. Photographs of the bodies of black soldiers, autopsy reports, and documents showing how these were classified as accidents. Elijah's heart stopped as he looked at one photo. A photo of a young black soldier. The face looked familiar. He read the label at the bottom. Private First Class Marcus Brooks, KIA, Vietnam, 04-15-1969 Brooks. Elijah's last name. No, this can't be, he stammered. He began reading the rest of the file. Marcus Brooks, 20 years old, from Chicago. He knew very little about his father. His mother always said his father had died heroically in Vietnam. But according to these documents, Marcus Brooks's death had been recorded differently. Friendly fire incident. Reclassified as enemy action. Friendly fire incident. So his father had been shot by his own friends. And why had this been classified as enemy fire? The deeper Elijah dug, the more horrific the truths he uncovered became. These weren't just isolated cases. It was a systematic cover-up operation. Black soldiers' deaths were deliberately misclassified, and their families were fed false information. Shadow must have noticed Elijah's state, because he quietly approached him and rested his head on the man's lap. This loving gesture brought Elijah back to the real world. Thanks, buddy. If it weren't for you, Elijah looked around. How had this helicopter ended up here? Who had hidden these documents? And most importantly, who else knew this truth? He took his phone out of his pocket, but there was no signal. It was difficult to get a signal this deep underground. He took photos of the documents. At least he would have evidence. Shadow, we have to get these documents out of here. But how are we going to carry them? The dog, as if understanding, began searching other parts of the helicopter. Shortly after, he found an old military bag. Elijah smiled. Good work, buddy. He placed the most important documents in the bag. But he had a lot of questions in his mind. How had these documents ended up here? Who had hidden them? And why were they coming to light now? As they exited the helicopter, Shadow became restless again. His ears perked up, scanning the surroundings. What is it, Shadow? The dog was looking deep into the forest. Elijah listened in that direction too. An engine sound was approaching from afar. Someone was coming. We have to leave now. Elijah gripped the bag tightly. Shadow led the way, and they moved silently through the forest. The engine sounds were getting closer. Someone knew where this helicopter was and was coming here. Once they were far enough away, Elijah stopped and looked back. There was movement where the helicopter was. At least 2 people were there. Shadow, we're in big trouble. But this time I won't run away. These truths need to come out. He looked at his dog. The determination in Shadow's eyes matched his own. They both knew there was no turning back now. On his way home, Elijah kept thinking, who could he take these documents to? The local police? The media? Or were they also part of the system? One thing was certain. He had to uncover the real cause of his father, Marcus Brooks's death, and this systematic cover-up. Not just for his father, but for all the black soldiers in those documents. Shadow, we have a long road ahead of us. Are you ready? The dog barked. It was as if he was saying, of course. That night, Elijah couldn't sleep. He read the documents over and over again. Each time he discovered new details. This wasn't just individual racism. It was an institutional, systematic policy of suppression. By morning, he had made his decision. He would expose this truth to the world. He would seek justice for his father and the other black soldiers. With Shadow by his side, documents in his bag, Elijah was preparing for a new battle. This time he wouldn't run away. He would fight. The next morning, Elijah woke up early. Shadow's restless movements had alerted him. The dog was looking out the window, ears perked up. Something was happening outside. Elijah looked out the window. On the forest road, a dark SUV was parked. There were 2 people inside, but he couldn't see clearly. The vehicle had been there for about 10 minutes. Shadow, I think we were spotted yesterday. The dog turned to him. The look in his eyes was worried but determined. He was by Elijah's side no matter what. Elijah went to the safe where he kept the documents. He needed to hide them somewhere secure. But first, he had to make a few copies. The nearest copy center was in town, about 30 kilometers away. Get ready, buddy. We've got a little trip ahead of us. They got into the old pickup truck. The SUV was still there. Elijah drove at a normal speed, trying not to attract attention. He checked the mirror. The car had started following them. I see, he muttered. He made a few maneuvers on the road to town. The SUV was still behind them. Shadow had noticed 2 staring tensely at the rear window. Don't worry, Shadow. I used to be in this line of work myself. As they approached the town center, Elijah made a sudden decision. Instead of turning onto the main street, he took the back alleys. The SUV was surprised and hesitated for a moment. Seizing the opportunity, Elijah quickly parked at the back entrance of the copy center. When he entered, a young woman greeted him. Her name was Sarah, about 25 years old, and she seemed friendly. "Hello, how can I help you?" "I need copies of these documents." "So it's very important." Sarah noticed Elijah's nervousness. "Sure, let's get right on it." While the documents were being copied, Elijah kept looking outside. The SUV hadn't arrived yet, but it would. "These documents look like military documents," Sarah said curiously. "Yes, historical documents. I'm doing some research. From the Vietnam era? My father died in that war too." "He was very young," Elijah looked at her. "What was your father's name?" "David Martinez. He died in 1970. According to my mother, he was killed in enemy fire." Elijah's heart raced. That name was among the documents he had seen yesterday. David Martinez, recorded as a friendly fire incident. "Sarah, do you have any more information about your father?" "Why are you asking?" Elijah hesitated. Could he tell this girl the truth? But at that moment, the sound of the SUV was heard. They were coming. "Sarah, this is very important. Make copies of these documents and keep a backup. In a safe place." "I don't understand. What's going on?" "I can't explain now, but it's about your father's real cause of death." Sarah's face changed. "What do you mean?" At that moment, the door knocked. Two men entered. Suited, wearing sunglasses. They looked official, but something was off. "Good day. I heard that photocopying of military documents was done here recently." Sarah looked at Elijah. He winked at her. "No, sir. We only handled routine work today." "Are you sure?" "Because our investigation is very important." "Yes, I'm sure." The men scanned the area. Shadow waited at Elijah's feet, ready. The tension was thick. "Well, if something like that happens, you'll let us know, right?" "Of course." After the men left, Sarah froze. "Who are they? What do they want?" "Sarah, listen to me very carefully now. These documents reveal the real causes of death of black soldiers in the Vietnam War, including your father. There was a systematic cover-up operation." Sarah's hands began to shake. "What are you saying?" "Your father didn't die in enemy fire. It was friendly fire. But this was hidden. Is that possible?" "The documents are here. There's evidence." Sarah began to cry. She had been fed false information for 30 years. Everything she knew about her father was a lie. "What do I do now?" "First, we need to secure these documents. Then we'll try to uncover the truth. I'll help you." Elijah was surprised. He didn't want to put this girl in danger. "Sarah, this is very dangerous. You saw these men. I don't care. I have to do this for my father." After the documents were copied, Sarah hid them in different places. She would take some to the safe secret compartment and others to her home. "Come to my house tonight. We'll talk about fatherhood in more detail." Elijah hesitated, but he had no other choice. He couldn't handle this alone. When they arrived at Sarah's house that evening, the young woman was waiting for them. It was a small but warm house. Her father's photos hung on the walls. "These are my father," said Sarah. "David Martinez, drafted at 19, died at 20. Elijah looked at the photos. A handsome, young Hispanic man. There was hope in his eyes. "Sarah, what were you told?" "About your father's death. According to my mother, they fell into an enemy trap during patrol. My father was shot while trying to protect the group." "That's not what really happened." Sarah sat down, trying to compose herself. "Your father had issues with his unit commander. This commander was white and racist. He was prejudiced against black and Hispanic soldiers." "How do you know?" "It's in the documents. On the day of the incident, your father was planning to report this commander's unfair behavior." Sarah's face changed. "Go on." "He was accidentally shot from behind during the patrol. By a bullet from the commander's gun. So, it was murder, but it was recorded as a friendly fire accident." Sarah jumped to her feet. "So I believed a lie for 30 years. Not just you, hundreds of families. Why? Why would they do such a thing?" "Because racism was rampant in Vietnam. Black and Hispanic soldiers were treated as second-class citizens, and those who spoke out were silenced." Sarah was crying. "My mum always said my dad was a hero. Your dad really was a hero. He died trying to stand up against injustice." That night, the three of them made their plans. They would get the documents to the media, human rights organizations, politicians, but they had to be careful. "Who are these guys?" Sarah asked. most likely from the intelligence service. These documents also involve some very high-level names. Like General Harrison, Colonel Thompson, these are big names. They're retired now, but they were running the operation back then. Are they still alive? Most of them are. And if these documents come out, it will affect them too. Shadow guarded the house all night. The dog sensed danger. He barked a few times, but there was no one outside. When morning came, they decided to put their plan into action. Sarah would go to work and act normal. Elijah would try to get the documents to the press. "Be careful," said Sarah. "These men are dangerous. You be careful too. If there's a problem, call me immediately." Elijah tried to contact the journalists. He spoke to John Williams, the editor of the local Montana newspaper. Williams was skeptical at first, but when he saw the documents, he was shocked. "This is unbelievable. How did you get these documents?" "That's not important. What's important is that the truth comes out." "But this is a huge claim. We need to prove it. The proof is here. You can verify the authenticity of the documents." Williams examined the documents. The stamps, the signatures, everything was authentic. "If we run this story, it will cause a huge stir. Are you ready?" "I'm ready." That night, the story was published. On the front page of the Montana Times, "The Hidden Truths of the Vietnam War, the Systematic Killing of Black Soldiers." The news quickly caught the attention of the national media: CNN, Fox News, New York Times. Everyone was interested in this story, but the reactions came quickly too. Elijah's phone was ringing constantly. Some were messages of support, but most contained threats. "Drop this, or you'll be in trouble. Don't stir up the past. It won't do you any good. You'll end up like your father." Shadow never left Elijah's side. The dog sensed the danger growing. Sarah was receiving similar threats, but both were determined. They would defend the truth to the end. On the third day, there was a bombshell development. Retired General Harrison made a statement on television. "These documents are completely fake. Communist propaganda. There was no such systematic process in Vietnam, but experts who verified the authenticity of the documents confirmed Harrison's denials. These documents are definitely authentic. There is zero chance they are fake." A major media war had now begun. One side defended the truth, the other tried to cover it up. Elijah began giving television interviews. Each time he told his father's story and demanded justice. "My father, Marcus Brooks, fought for his country. But it wasn't the enemy who killed him, it was his own friends. And this was covered up. How will you prove these claims?" "My evidence is here. Dozens of documents, photographs, autopsy reports, all from official sources." Shadow was by Elijah's side during all the television appearances. The dog's presence had a powerful effect on viewers. Within a week, the issue began to be discussed nationwide. The unknown face of the Vietnam War was emerging. If these documents are accurate, it appears that tens of thousands of families have been misinformed. The Department of Justice has begun investigating the matter. Members of Congress are calling for an investigative committee to be established. Elijah was now fighting not only for his father, but for all the victimized families. It was a huge responsibility, but he wouldn't back down. Shadow was his greatest support throughout this process. The dog seemed to be aware of everything and was protecting and empowering Elijah. "Shadow, I wouldn't be this strong without you, my friend." 2 weeks later, the situation had completely changed. Elijah was no longer just a local hero, but a national symbol. But this fame also brought with it great dangers. That morning, Shadow was more restless than usual. The dog kept going to the door, ears pricked. Elijah could feel the tension too. "What's up, buddy?" More guests. Shadow barked. This time it was a different kind of bark, something more urgent, more dangerous. Elijah looked out the window. This time there wasn't one SUV, there were 3 vehicles, and the men weren't trying to hide anymore. It was a clear message of threat. His phone rang. It was an urgent call from Sarah. "Elijah! Big trouble. They raided my shop." "Who raided it?" "I don't know, but they looked official. They said they were the FBI, but they didn't show any ID. They searched for all the documents. Where did we hide them?" "Don't worry, they didn't find them. But I'm not safe anymore. Come here immediately. Shadow and I will protect you." "I can't come. They're watching my house too. But don't come there either." "It's too dangerous," Elijah thought. Sarah was right. There was no safe place left. Then we're moving to Plan B. What's Plan B? We're going to Washington. We'll present the documents directly to Congress. Isn't that even more dangerous? Maybe, but if we stay here, they'll quietly eliminate us. At least in Washington, eyes will be on us. Sarah hesitated. But how will we get there? They're watching our every move. Shadow and I know the way. You take a different route. That night, Elijah left his home. He placed the original documents in a special bag and set off with Shadow via back roads. He left the pickup truck and took another vehicle Sarah had arranged. He felt they were being followed constantly along the way, but Shadow's presence gave him strength. The dog seemed to understand he was part of a greater mission. This started for my father, buddy, but now it's become something much bigger. Shadow looked at him. The expression in his eyes seemed to say, I know and I'm with you until the end. Before reaching Washington, they met Sarah in Pennsylvania. The young woman looked tired but determined. It's like no one is behind us, she said. But we can't be sure. It doesn't matter. The time for hiding is over. When they entered Washington, D.C., they were awestruck by the size of the city. It was the center of power, but also a place where great interests were protected. Their first stop was the office of Congresswoman Maria Rodriguez. Rodriguez was a Hispanic politician and human rights advocate. After hearing Sarah's story, she had agreed to see them. While waiting in the office, Elijah looked around. There were various awards and photographs on the walls. Rodriguez seemed like someone who truly fought for human rights. Mr. Brooks, the secretary called them. The Congresswoman is waiting for you. Rodriguez's office was large and impressive. She herself was different from what they had expected. She was a middle-aged, energetic woman. Mr. Brooks, I heard your story. You are acting very courageously. Thank you. But this is not courage, it is necessity. May I see the documents? Elijah opened the briefcase. As Rodriguez carefully examined the documents, her expression changed. This is incredible. How could something like this remain hidden for so long? Because powerful people wanted it to. I know these names. Some are still alive, some hold important positions. That's why we're here. We want justice. Rodriguez stood up. I'll help you. But it won't be easy. What can we do? First, we'll hold a press conference. We'll get the media's attention. Then I'll submit a motion to establish an investigative committee in Congress. How long will it take? Months, maybe years. But we have no other choice. That evening, they attended the press conference Rodriguez had organized. Major media outlets in Washington were there. Today you have two very brave people before you, said Rodriguez. They are revealing the hidden truths of the Vietnam War. Elijah approached the microphone. Shadow stood beside him. My name is Elijah Brooks. My father, Marcus Brooks, died in Vietnam in 1969. We were told he was killed in enemy fire, but the truth was different. The journalists in the room listened intently. My father was killed by friendly fire, but this was covered up. And it wasn't just my father. Hundreds of black and Hispanic soldiers shared the same fate. How do you support these claims? Asked the CNN reporter. We have documents, official military documents, autopsy reports, photographs. All original. Sarah came up beside him. My father was David Martinez. He was killed the same way. How did you get these documents? Elijah looked at Shadow. My dog showed them to me. Shadow found an abandoned helicopter in the forest. The documents were there. This answer surprised the journalists. It was unbelievable that a dog could uncover such a huge scandal. What kind of dog is Shadow? Asked the Washington Post reporter. A German shepherd, well-trained. But most importantly, he senses injustice. Shadow barked as if he understood. The audience smiled. The press conference caused a huge stir. The next day, the story was on the front page of every newspaper. Vietnam scandal, systematic racism and murder. Dog discovers. America shocked, end of a 50-year lie. But the backlash came quickly, too. That evening, they called Rodriguez. I have bad news for you. There is pressure from above. They say my motion for an investigation will be rejected. How can that be? We have evidence. Evidence isn't always enough. Political power is more effective. Elijah was disappointed. So what are we going to do? We're not giving up. There are other ways. The next day they were met with a big surprise. A delegation from the Department of Veterans Affairs arrived. Mr. Brooks, the secretary, wants to see you. When they arrived at the department building, Secretary Robert Stevens greeted them. He looked old and experienced. Mr. Brooks, I heard your story. It's very sad. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. But we have a problem. These documents could jeopardize military security. How so? The details of old operations contain information that must still be kept secret. Elijah didn't understand. Mr. Secretary, these are documents from 50 years ago. What needs to remain secret now? National security is a constant concern, Mr. Brooks. What about justice? What about the families of those soldiers who died? Stevens took a deep breath. I have a proposal for you. Hand these documents over to us. In return, we will organize a special memorial service for your father. Just for my father? What about the other hundreds of soldiers? We'll do something for them too. Elijah stood up. Shadow stood up too. Minister, are you trying to buy me off? I'm just proposing a reasonable solution. The reasonable solution is for the truth to come out, for the guilty to be brought to justice. Stevens's face hardened. Mr. Brooks, some truths are better left untold. Maybe for you, but not for us. As they left the meeting, Sarah was worried. That man threatened us, I know, but I won't be afraid. That evening, as they rested in their hotel, Shadow was restless. The dog kept going to the door. Something's going to happen again, I guess. At midnight, there was a knock at the door. 3 men were standing outside. Mr. Brooks, you need to come with us. Who are you? Homeland Security. We have questions regarding national security. Many thoughts crossed Elijah's mind. Were these real agents or someone else's men? Show me your ID. The men showed their IDs. They looked real, but he couldn't be sure. I can come with Shadow. The dog can't come, then I won't come either. The men exchanged glances. They decided not to push the situation. We'll be waiting for you tomorrow morning. After they left, Sarah panicked. What are we going to do? They're going to arrest us. No, if they were going to arrest us, they would have done it now. They're trying to scare us. So what happens tomorrow? Tomorrow will ruin their game. Elijah immediately called Rodriguez. Things have gotten serious. Homeland Security wants to talk to me. That's normal. They're conducting a security investigation. Or they're trying to silence me. Possible. What do you think? I want an open meeting with the media tomorrow. What do you mean? If they're going to question me, the press should be here too. I want transparency. Rodriguez thought for a moment. It's risky, but right. I'll arrange it. The next morning, as they headed to the federal building, Shadow was with them. Elijah was determined not to leave him behind. No dogs allowed, said security. Shadow comes in with me. It's my right. Based on what right? Disability rights. Shadow is my emotional support animal. This was a legal challenge. Even without official documentation, they had to be sensitive about it. Fine, but he'll have to go through screening. Shadow passed the check. The dog was very calm, as if he thought everything was normal. When they entered the interrogation room, 3 agents were waiting. There were also reporters in the back room. Mr. Brooks, can you explain how you came into possession of these documents? Shadow found them in an abandoned helicopter in the woods. Who left that helicopter there? I don't know. But my guess is that a former employee had a guilty conscience and hid the documents. Do you know this person? No. The agents looked at each other. Mr. Brooks, these documents threaten national security. How can documents from 50 years ago be a threat? Some operational details are still sensitive. What about the murders? Are they sensitive too? These are unproven allegations. Aren't the documents proof? The authenticity of the documents is questionable. Elijah stood up. Experts have confirmed their authenticity. Which experts? He was expecting this question. The FBI's own lab. The agents were surprised. Where did he get this information? Mr. Brooks, we have a proposal for you. Hand over these documents and in return, no charges will be filed. What charges? Did I commit a crime? Possession of classified documents is a crime. These documents are 50 years old. They are no longer classified. We don't think so. Shadow stood up at that moment and barked softly. The dog sensed the tension. Minister, came a voice from the room where the journalists were gathered. We have questions. The agents hesitated. The presence of the media made them uncomfortable. Mr. Brooks, this meeting is over. Think about our offer. There's nothing to think about. I want justice. As they left the building, the media was waiting for them. Mr. Brooks, what did you talk about? They tried to scare me, but I'm not scared. I will fight to the end for my father to get justice. How does Shadow support you? Elijah patted his dog's head. Shadow isn't just a dog. He's been by my side since the beginning of this fight. Thanks to him, the truth came out. Shadow barked as if he understood. The media loved this. That evening, it was big news on TV. Veteran and his dog fight on despite threats. Shadow, America's bravest dog. Vietnam scandal, government pressure mounts. It was no longer just national news. It had become international. The world knew Shadow and Elijah, but the danger had also increased. There were powerful interests at stake, and they weren't ready to give up. A week later, developments in Washington, D.C. were rapidly changing. Elijah and Shadow were no longer just a veteran and his dog. They had become national symbols. They received hundreds of messages of support every day, but threats also continued to come in. That morning, they were making plans with Sarah at their hotel. The news from Rodriguez was good. They had gathered enough support to establish an investigative committee in Congress. But there's a problem, Rodriguez said on the phone. The other side has also taken action. Former military officials have started lobbying. What kind of lobbying? Elijah asked. They're trying to prove the documents are fake. They've also launched a smear campaign against you. What kind of smear? They're saying you have PTSD, that you're unreliable. Elijah was furious. That's despicable. I know, but we need to be prepared. This battle has only just begun. That day, a counter-campaign began in the media. Some channels started questioning the reasons for Elijah's discharge from the military. There are question marks in Elijah Brooks' military records. How credible are the claims of a veteran who has undergone PTSD treatment? Are these documents real or the product of a personality disorder? Shadow sensed Elijah's low morale. The dog snuggled up to him, resting his head on the man's lap. This loving gesture calmed Elijah. You're right, buddy. I won't play their game. That evening, he appeared live on CNN. Shadow was by his side. Mr. Brooks, what do you say to your critics? Yes, I received PTSD treatment. Yes, I bear the scars of war. But that doesn't make me a liar. On the contrary, it makes me understand the importance of seeking the truth even better. What role did Shadow play in this process? Elijah looked at his dog. Shadow just found the documents. He uncovered the truth. He has no race, religion, or political views. He just senses injustice and shows it to me. Your critics claim the documents are fake. The FBI lab confirmed their authenticity. That's sufficient evidence. Do you have any supporters besides your family? Thousands of military families support us because they've gone through similar experiences. After the broadcast, they were met with a big surprise. An elderly black man was waiting in the hotel lobby. He was about 70 years old, and his demeanor clearly showed he was a former soldier. Mr. Brooks, I'm Samuel Washington. Hello, Mr. Washington. I was in Vietnam too. From 1969 to 1971, Elijah's heart raced. Do you happen to know my father? Marcus Brooks. Of course I know him. He was a good man. Sarah joined them. This coincidence was incredible. Were you in the same unit as Marcus? Yes, the 173rd Airborne Brigade. I remember him very well. Do you know anything about his death? Samuel's face changed. I was there that night. I saw everything. Can you tell me about it? I've been carrying this burden for 50 years. It's time to tell. They sat down in the hotel cafe. Samuel began to tell his story. We were on patrol duty that night. Marcus had argued with Commander Harrison. Harrison was racist. He treated black soldiers like dogs. What were they arguing about? Harrison was sending black soldiers on the most dangerous missions. Marcus objected to this. Then what happened? Samuel took a deep breath. During the patrol, Harrison shot Marcus in the back. In cold blood, and did you see it? Yes, but I couldn't prove it. Harrison threatened me. Keep quiet or you'll suffer the same fate, he said. Sarah started crying. Did my father suffer the same fate? David Martinez. I remember him too. He also stood up to Harrison. The outcome was the same. How was so much crime hidden? Harrison was powerful. He had high-ranking friends. They altered the report, silenced the witnesses. Why are you speaking up now? Because Harrison is still alive. He's 85, but he's still powerful. He has influence in political circles. This information had a bombshell effect. Harrison wasn't just a retired general. He was still a powerful figure. Where does he live? In Virginia, in a large mansion. Close to the Pentagon. Will you testify? Samuel hesitated. It's dangerous, but yes, I'm not afraid anymore. I'm 70 years old. It's time to say what I have to say. The next day, they told Rodriguez about the situation. The congressman was very excited. Samuel Washington's testimony greatly strengthens our case. We can subpoena Harrison for questioning. Will he agree? He doesn't have to, but he might under media pressure. They tried to reach Harrison all week. The former general kept giving evasive answers. Mr. Harrison is ill. He can't receive visitors. Mr. Harrison is out of town. Mr. Harrison will not comment. But as media pressure mounted, Harrison's lawyer called. My client is ready to make a statement. But he has conditions. And what are the conditions? No live broadcast. Only a written statement. Unacceptable. He must testify before Congress. The negotiations lasted for days. Finally, Harrison agreed to give a written statement. When his statement arrived, it shocked everyone. The Vietnam War was a difficult period. Mistakes were made. But there was no systematic racism. The deaths of Brooks and Martinez were tragic accidents. Accidents. Elijah was furious. Samuel Washington saw everything. Samuel Washington's memory confuses events from long ago. It's unreliable. This response sparked a huge debate in the media. Harrison had taken a defensive stance but wasn't completely denying it. So there is some truth to it, said Sarah. Otherwise, he wouldn't be defending himself so much. When the Congressional Investigation Committee was formed, Elijah, Sarah, Samuel, and Shadow attended the first meeting. Shadow's entry into the Capitol building caused controversy, but permission was eventually granted. Committee Chair Elizabeth Warren opened the meeting. Today we are examining allegations of systematic racism in the Vietnam War. Mr. Brooks, you may present your claims. Elijah stood up. Shadow stood beside him. Honorable committee members, my father Marcus Brooks and hundreds of black soldiers were killed in Vietnam by their own comrades. These murders were ruled accidents. What is your evidence? Official military documents, witness statements, and the documents this dog found. How did your dog find these documents? Shadow discovered an abandoned helicopter in the jungle. Inside were dozens of classified documents. The committee members looked at each other. This story was truly unbelievable. Samuel Washington also testified. I was there in 1969. I saw Commander Harrison kill Marcus Brooks with my own eyes. Why haven't you spoken up until now? I was afraid. Harrison was powerful. Is there any evidence for these claims? Samuel pulled an old photograph from his pocket. This photo was taken that night. Harrison is standing over Marcus's body. The photograph was shown to the committee. It was a photo of Harrison smiling, posing next to Marcus's body. How will you prove the authenticity of this photo? It can be examined at the FBI lab. When the photo was examined by experts, its authenticity was confirmed. This was the turning point in the case. Harrison's lawyer made an urgent statement. This photo has been taken out of context. Such photos are normal during wartime, but it was too late. Public opinion had turned against Harrison. The 85-year-old war criminal, Vietnam's secret killers, racist general finally caught. Other witnesses came forward. Soldiers returning from Vietnam began telling similar stories. I was there too. I knew what Harrison was doing, but I kept quiet. We have similar documents. Lists kept on Harrison's orders. Within a month, the hidden face of the Vietnam War was fully exposed. Not only Harrison, but other commanders were also accused. It was revealed that there was a secret operation called Operation Silence. The purpose of this operation was to cover up the murders committed by racist commanders. Documents from the Pentagon were shocking. Black soldier casualties will be classified as friendly fire to avoid demoralization. Discipline problems will be reported as enemy action. Witnesses will be silenced, threatened if necessary. These documents showed that there was a systematic cover-up operation. High-level officials were aware of this. Elijah assessed these developments in television interviews. My father's death wasn't just individual racism. It was an institutional, premeditated crime. Will these discoveries affect other wars? Possibly. Iraq, Afghanistan. Who knows what else is hidden? What is Shadow's role in this process now? Elijah looked at his dog. Shadow just found the truth. But the truth turned out to be so big that the documents he found alone are no longer enough. Indeed, Shadow's discovery had created a domino effect. Every day, new documents and new witnesses were emerging. 6 months later, Harrison stood trial. Despite being 85 years old, he faced charges of war crimes and human rights violations. In the courtroom, Elijah, Sarah, Samuel, and Shadow sat in the front row. This was their victory. Harrison's lawyer made his final statement. "My client is old and sick. He cannot be tried for events that happened 50 years ago." The prosecutor was adamant. Justice has no age. This man killed hundreds of innocent people and hid it. After deliberating for 3 days, the jury delivered its verdict. The defendant Harrison is found guilty of first-degree murder, conspiracy, and human rights violations. The courtroom rose to its feet and applauded. Elijah was crying. After 50 years, justice had been served for his father. Shadow barked as if he understood the significance of the moment. The media was waiting for them as they left the courthouse. "Mr. Brooks, how do you feel? My father can now rest in peace. But this is only the beginning." "What do you mean?" "Similar situations may have occurred in other wars. Shadow and I will continue our investigation." "What do you owe Shadow?" "Everything. Without him, the truth would never have come out. He's not just a dog, he's a symbol of justice." Harrison's conviction was celebrated nationwide. But the most important result was that other victims came forward. Hundreds of soldiers returning from Vietnam began to tell similar stories. "We were also victims of racist attacks. Our friends were also killed by friendly fire. We have similar documents, too." The movement started by Elijah and Shadow turned into a national reckoning. America was confronting the reality of systematic racism during the Vietnam War. The Department of Veterans Affairs made fundamental changes. Old records were re-examined and compensation was paid to the families of victims. The Brooks-Martinez Act was passed. This law established a special commission to investigate cases of military discrimination and compensate. Victims. Shadow had now officially been given the title Justice Dog. A special ceremony was held in Congress. Shadow became the first dog in history to receive the Congressional Medal of Honor. Elijah, speaking at the ceremony, was emotional. Shadow just found the documents. But what he did was much greater. He awakened America's conscience. Media interviews were conducted after the ceremony. "Mr. Brooks, what will you do next?" "Shadow and I will continue searching. There are more cases awaiting justice." "On what issues?" "All kinds of injustice. Racism, police violence, institutional discrimination." "How is Shadow so successful?" Elijah looked at his dog. "Shadow doesn't have superpowers. He just smells injustice, and he leads me in the right direction." A year later, Elijah and Shadow returned to Montana. But their old quiet life was gone. They were constantly receiving invitations from various parts of the country. "Mr. Brooks, we have similar documents here. Can your dog search other places too? We need your help." Shadow was now a famous dog. He received gifts and special meals, but he was still the same loyal, humble dog. One evening, Sarah came to visit Montana. The three of them sat together in front of the fire. "What do you think about the future?" Sarah asked. "I don't know, but Shadow and I will continue to investigate injustices." What other issues? Elijah thought. Lately, he had been receiving complaints about different issues, especially about police brutality and racism. For example, I recently received a letter from a veteran from Michigan. He has suspicions about racist police in his city. "What kind of suspicions?" He says they are making secret preparations against black protesters. They are hiding armored vehicles and special weapons. They even buried them outside the city to hide them. Shadow was listening to this conversation. The dog's ears were perked up as if waiting for a new task. "Is this worth investigating?" Sarah asked. "Let's see what Shadow says." Elijah looked at his dog. "Shadow, shall we go to Michigan to look for buried armored trucks?" The dog barked. "A yes bark. I guess we've made our decision." 2 weeks later, Elijah and Shadow set off for Michigan. It was the beginning of a new quest for justice. This time they were looking for physical evidence, not just documents. Veteran Tom Bradley was waiting for them in Michigan. He was a middle-aged black man. He looked like an experienced cop. "Mr. Brooks, thank you for coming. Let me explain the situation." "We're listening." "I worked as a cop for 20 years. After retiring, I started noticing some things." "Like what?" "Lately, as black protests have increased, the police department has been making strange preparations." "What kind of preparations?" "Secret meetings at night, special weapon orders, armored vehicle purchases. And strangest of all, they're storing these things in secret locations outside the city. Shadow grew uneasy as he listened to Tom. He sensed something bad. Do these preparations have anything to do with the black community? I'm sure of it, because they're only mapping black neighborhoods. Do you have any proof? I got my hands on some documents, but the real evidence is in the buried armored trucks. Tom showed the documents. They contained shocking plans: Operation Suppression, Black Protest Control Plan, Armored Truck Burial Coordinates, Special Weapons Depot Map. While Elijah was examining the documents, Shadow stood up. The dog went to the door and wanted to leave. Shadow senses something. He wants to take us somewhere. Where could he take us? I don't know, but let's follow him. Shadow's instincts are never wrong. At night, they followed Shadow. The dog was heading out of the city. It stopped at an abandoned industrial area. What could be here? Shadow went to an old factory. It stopped at the back of the building and started digging in the ground. Something is buried here. Elijah and Tom started digging. Half an hour later, they hit something metal. What's this? When they cleared the dirt, a large armored truck appeared. It had Detroit PD written on it. This is a police department truck. But what's it doing here? When they opened the truck, they were shocked. Inside were automatic weapons, bomb-making materials and gas bombs. These aren't normal police weapons. These are military-grade weapons. Why were they buried? Because they're illegal. The police department can't openly store weapons like these. Shadow was searching other areas too. The dog indicated there were more buried vehicles in the same area. This place is a veritable weapons graveyard. When they found the second truck, it contained even more horrific things: fake uniforms, masks, and plans to attack black protesters. Reading these plans makes me sick. There are fake flag operations here. They plan to incite violence at black protests to create a pretext for a heavy-handed response. Shadow found a third location. This time, there was a large, armored vehicle. Inside were fake police uniforms and ID cards. What is this? Looks like they were going to conduct operations under the guise of fake police. They gathered evidence with the photos they took that night, but now they were in a very dangerous situation. No one should know about this information, at least for now. Why? Because it's not yet clear who is behind this conspiracy. It could be someone very high up. The next day, they went to the local FBI office. Agent Sarah Martinez received them. You have serious allegations. Can I see your evidence? They showed her the photos and documents. This is very serious. The local police department cannot stockpile illegal weapons like this. And worse, they are planning false flag operations using them. I will launch a federal investigation, but secrecy is crucial. 2 days later, the FBI seized the buried weapons in a covert operation. Police. Police Chief Thompson was among those arrested. Operation Suppression is completely illegal. It's a racist conspiracy. The media broke the news with a big headline: Shadow uncovers another major scandal. Michigan police burying weapons. Against black protesters, weapons of war found in armored trucks. This incident reignited nationwide debates on police reform. Elijah assessed the situation in television interviews. The weapons Shadow found are proof of systematic racism. This isn't just individual prejudice, it's an institutional conspiracy. Is it possible that there are other secret weapons caches like this elsewhere? Absolutely. Shadow and I will continue searching. How does Shadow find them so accurately? Shadow can smell injustice. There's a stench of evil, and he senses it. 2 months later, thanks to the evidence Shadow found, nationwide reforms were implemented. The Shadow Act was passed. This law ensured the auditing of police department weapons stockpiles, established a special commission to protect civil rights, provided for the creation of an anonymous hotline to report racist activities. Shadow was declared a national hero for the second time. This time he was on the cover of Time magazine, America's Conscience Shadow. A year later, Elijah and Shadow had uncovered similar scandals in 15 different cities. Each time, they found buried weapons and secret plans. The Brooks Foundation had now become a national organization. Thousands of volunteers were learning Shadow's methods and seeking justice in their own cities. Elijah was now 48 years old. His hair had turned completely silver, but the determination in his eyes had not diminished. Shadow, we've come a long way. The dog looked at him. He was aging, but still strong. Without you, my father's story would be unknown and the weapons in Michigan would never have been found, Shadow barked. It was as if he was saying, our work isn't done yet. You're right. We still have a lot to do. That evening, Sarah called. Elijah, there's an urgent call from Texas. They have a similar situation there. What kind of situation? Buried armored vehicles again, but this time it's a much bigger conspiracy. It involves the Border Patrol. Elijah looked at Shadow. Are you ready, buddy? Shadow stood up, wagging his tail, with his usual determined, courageous attitude. All right then, we're going to Texas. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just a new beginning. Elijah Brooks and Shadow would go wherever they found injustice and uncover the truth, because Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was America's conscience. And conscience never silences, never tires, never gives up. The fight for justice continued. And Shadow, alongside Elijah, would be part of this fight until the very end.